Rockgalleriet. Et pladealbum. Skrev historie. Og netop i år kan denne aftens værk endda fejre 30 års jubilæum. Det kom til verden i det legendariske år 1968. Det var Rolling Stones bidrag til frigørelsen og tidens bevægelse. De havde på grund af den almindelige uro og The Establishments forfølgelse af dem, måtte opgive at turnere året før. Til gengæld blev pladestudiet så deres fristed, hvor tingene kunne udfolde sig, og albummet Beggars Banquet blev en blanding af et nutidsdokument og en søgen tilbage til de kilder, som altid havde været rullestenenes grundinspiration. Banquet-pladen blev en ny begyndelse.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste.
Vi følger værket denne time i selskab med Keith Richards.
We've worked from 63 through the 60s, so late 66, non-stop on the road. I mean, we did 340 gigs a year, 10 days to make a record, which gave you, 6 days off a year. And also you got to write songs. So kind of a little road fever, and at the same time then everybody's suddenly dropping acid all around you and on you and in you, and it was just time to take a break, and this was our way of coming back out of that sort of vacation, a little holiday, the Costa Brava.
1967 had not been a good year for the Rolling Stones. Their rebellious image had turned against them when the establishment began to take it seriously, seeing the Stones as a moral threat to youth society. A witch hunt culminated in drug busts for Keith Richards, Mick Jagger and Brian Jones, followed by jail sentences of such severity they were actually criticised by the Times before being overturned on appeal. The turmoil did nothing for their music. A faded Flower Power single, We Love You, and a psychedelic second-hand Sgt. Pepper album, Their Satanic Majesty's Request. Then in May 1968 came Jumping Jack Flash. The Stones were back at their best.
The first record with Jimmy Miller, who was a dream to work with, especially in those early days, Also had been resting up for a bit after working on the road for most of the 60s non-stop, and Satanic Majesties, and was really almost done semi-comatose, sort of, do we really have to make an album? And what's happening now? So it was like a bit of a revitalization. I got interested in recording again.
Where did that come from?
I think I was born with it, because to me it's satisfaction backwards, and I hear it in nearly every song that I do. It's in there somewhere. It's either the reversed, or it's just dragged out in a different time, or elongated, but it's in... I've wondered that myself, it's just there, I mean, I don't know about that. I can't give you a definite answer on that. Ask me Mum or something. I don't know.
If Jumping Jack Flash was a signpost, it indicated that the album the Stones were working on with producer Jimmy Miller was going to be something special. It was expected out that summer, but it didn't appear. Decca Records took exception to the artwork, an amusing jumble of graffiti, and refused to release it in the sleeve the Stones had chosen.
To us, it was like, what a cheek, here we go, give them a great record, and they're going to make a fuss about a bit of graffiti, people get, gotten away with far worse, before or after. It was just like, once more, the guys that run the whole show, the ones that hold the purse strings, the record companies, etc., that just wanting to put their boot in, for no real reason. I mean, so when we said, well, here we've gone ahead and made this, and we're very happy and proud with this record, and they want to screw us up about the package to put it in. So, and we said, we just dug in our heels for a while, but then after a bit, we realized that it was more important to get the record out than it was to just squabble with the record company, So we just said, sorry, change record companies.
But back to the album itself. What was the thinking in the studio as they made Beggars Banquet?
You're going to make a record. It depends how you actually feel, I think, when more than what you think about. as I said, the Jumpin' Jack Flashes are the first inklings of actually enjoying making a record again, and there was a certain sense of direction in the sound. Working with Jimmy Miller, who would give us the opportunity to do these weirdo experiments, you know. And so to have the freedom to work and have the time to fool around, and I think having the break for a while and being off the road, just sort of regathering some energy and some steam, you know, and we're kind of ready to work again.
Side 1, track 1, Sympathy for the Devil, and lyrics which sounded as if they were intended to cause a stir.
There might have been a little bit of that, but I think more the feeling of, well, this is the way it is right now. A lot of the subject matter that you write about, it depends what's going on around you. Just read the titles and you get a feel of what 1967, 68 were like.
A song I understood had started out very differently from the way it wound up on Beggars Banquet.
Yeah, a lot of songs do that. You have to sort of follow them through and play them. It started off as virtually a sort of Dylan-esque sort of ballad, you know, and slowly it got faster and faster, and it ended up as a samba. You know, you never know. You have sometimes, it's not because I don't think you don't create songs. They're not all your creation, you know. It's you just sort of pluck them out of the air if you're sort of around and receptive, and then you say, well, I kind of like this, and something about the song says that I'm worth the time and the trouble to sort of just keep playing me and find out, you know. And if you hang on to their tail long enough, then suddenly you go, right, there I am, I'm ready, you know. And so you kind of have to listen to the mechanics of the song all the time and be very receptive to what it's trying to tell you while you're making it.
And it's songs like that one also say, I'm a classic.
Not necessarily the songs, because you get so involved in the mechanics of recording each song that you don't trust in any of that. But as far as the way the album was shaping up as we were making it, I had a definite feeling that we were starting to find the Rolling Stones in there, you know, that this was a very real album, and it was fun to make, and it got more and more exciting as each track built up, and realized that we did have the essence of the Stones in there was getting down on tape, and that was getting exciting. But each song, particularly, individually, you're so involved in the actual mechanics, you know. Oh, you mean it goes to this chord instead? Oh, right. So, you know, you're so close to it that you don't, with every song, you know, think about it. It's more the whole collection of songs start to impress you in that way, you know.
So what did he remember about No Expectations?
I wrote it real quick, just sitting around at home, and then when I took it into the studio, Brian put that lovely slide guitar on.
No Expectations, slide guitar by Brian Jones. Elsewhere, Jones's contribution to Beggars Banquet was not so obvious.
Brian's contribution had been dropping off for quite a while, you know. Brian worked incredibly hard with me in the very, very early days of putting the Stones together, and it was Brian and I who had really gotten into the essence of this two-guitar thing, of not separating, of trying to get them to sort of go into each other, and you wouldn't care particularly who suddenly flew out and did a little line, and so that you could almost read each other's minds. But Brian also was the first victim of the star trip, and he went off of the guitar very quickly, especially once Mick and I started writing songs. I think he resented that a lot, and his reaction and his answer to that was to sort of just get into being, he'd spend more time shampooing his hair than he would making a record, and he started to fiddle around. Although I will say his contribution in other ways, the colours, the different colours, and that he added by playing around with other instruments. He had an incredible talent for walking into a studio, whatever was lying around. May have never touched that instrument in his life before, but by the time the song was sort of halfway getting there, he'd have a riff down under my thumb, or a sitar painted black, sometimes chimes and marimbas, all these kind of things. He had So he contributed a lot in making the Rolling Stones records have this some of those extra exotic colours going on in the tapestry, in the weave, so the warp and the weft.
Track 3 of our classic album is Dear Doctor.
That was almost just like fun to play. That was like just almost a joke because of the tempo of it and the rhythm of it. It was like just have another beer and let's play it, And, most of the tracks on Beggars Banquet were incredibly easy to make, and they just sort of flowed out, And Dear Doctor was really, almost a booze up, just cutting the track, And once you'd started, everybody started yelling out lines, And so it was kind of like that. It was 1 or 2 takes, probably.
Dear Doctor, from our classic album, The Rolling Stones' Beggars Banquet. My guest is Keith Richards, and the next track is Parachute Woman.
We just thought it was just such a funny idea, Parachute Woman, land on me tonight, And so, I mean, you can understand how, when I say that it was really fun to make. It was maybe just a few takes. I cranked it out on a cassette player and then buzzed it through a extension speaker with a microphone in front of it, and we put it onto 8-track.
Like Dear Doctor, a song that Keith recalls in terms of the fun they had with it. But with courtroom appearances continuing, for Brian Jones at least, surely fun was hard to come by.
I think that's maybe why it was such fun, because in the studio at least you could get away from that, and so you kind of savoured that. Once you were in the studio, you were virtually in an embassy of your own. You could just lock the doors. Mick virtually wrote that song by himself. He just came and said, "I've got this song," and I thought it was a little long, personally, but everybody's just allowed to stretch a little, And I played the slide guitar on that, and maybe the acoustic as well, and then the slide. And I was just kind of backing Mick up on whatever he wanted to do on that one. He'd had it all written and knew what he wanted to do, so I was just playing like session guitar man on that.
Were most of the songs ready when the Stones went in to record?
I wouldn't say they were totally ready. There are ideas from there, maybe the riffs and the hook lines, but a lot of the stuff was done actually in the studio. You'd finish off the song, and you would change the song in the studio without you wouldn't care, and I still don't care about going into the studio with half a song, because I know that what's going to be played and what's going to go down in the studio is going to help you finish it.
And so to Street Fighting Man, banned by some radio stations in America in case it sparked off riots. But which riots sparked off the song? Chicago? Paris? There were so many that summer.
It was the riots in Grosvenor Square. It was the big one outside the American embassy. That was what it was about. On there is the bass, which I overdubbed afterwards. Otherwise, all those guitars they're just acoustics, and it's all acoustic instruments except for an overdubbed electric bass. I was using the best qualities that you can get rhythmically out of an acoustic guitar, and I was really using one of the first cassette players, and that was really a pickup. I was using it in that way as a sort of turning it into an electric guitar, but you could play acoustically, and then just play it, ram the volume up, play the cassette, full pelt through a little extension speaker, and transfer it onto tape. So it was just a different way of turning an acoustic guitar into an electric guitar as well, trying to get the best of both worlds.
As if to confirm that Beggars Banquet was a return to basics for the Stones, the album included an old blues number by the Reverend Robert Wilkins, Prodigal Son.
I'd had quite a lot of time off, and for the first time that I'd actually gone back and started to listen, and had time to listen for quite a while, a few months, and sit around and listen to my old blues records. And first off, I loved the idea of the song, and I loved the biblical quality in the subject matter, and also at the same time this Beggars Banquet was the first record that I was fooling around with different tunings. I'd gotten a bit bored, and I was getting a bit stale with playing everything on a concert tuning, the regular 6-string thing. And so I was And I'd had the time to sit around and fool around and figure out some of these old blues tunings, which is another reason why the Beggars Banquet has a slightly different sound to it, because, that's what tunings and tonalities will do for you. To me, it rejuvenated my idea and enthusiasm for playing guitar, because you get accidents happening that... you wouldn't have done that on regular tuning because you think you know it too well. It's something you say, well, that would be wrong. But then you just turn a few pegs and get a different tuning, and suddenly you get almost like a different... It really interested me again, gave me a lot of renewed interest in playing the guitar.
Prodigal Son. And next on our classic album, Beggars Banquet, comes Stray Cat Blues.
That was just like a real good heavy blues riff. Always reminded me a bit of Albert King in a way. Not the style of playing or anything, but just that tempo and that kind of dark kind of riff, And Mick came up with the perfect lyric idea. When the lyrics fit the song, or the attitude of the lyrics fit a riff like that, you go, all right, yeah. And that's when you really start to beam. When you don't have to work at it, when you don't have to, both parts of songwriting come together, and so you just go for it and have a good time. That's just playing the blues.
And the penultimate track on Beggars Banquet is Factory Girl.
Factory Girl basically came from me tinkling around with a little bit of, and not so much bluegrass music, but early white hillbilly music. Because when I started playing guitar in art school, seriously, my first stuff I learnt was Jack Elliott stuff, and Woody Guthrie, Cisco Houston, and stuff like that. It was just maybe just a little remembrance of, since I was working very much with acoustic guitar on this album, I was playing it a lot, and I was getting my finger picking down a little bit, and Nicky came up with a little fiddle. We came up with that fiddle effect, and I was saying also Jimmy Miller was encouraging us to try all this stuff instead of sort of saying we must make he could have worked with somebody else who would have said, no, we must have electric guitars all the time, and like really sort of go for like a big production sort of thing. He just watched us and let us follow our noses, and gave us a lot of encouragement. So it was really Mick wrote most of the lyrics to that. It's basically his idea lyrically, and it was just my little finger-picking riff behind it.
I asked Keith about the launch of the album in London, remembered as a battle of custard pies between the Stones and journalists and record company executives. But it turned out he wasn't involved.
Either is in court, or I'm not the sort of person that people throw pies at, because I kind of overreact to stuff like that,
And so to the closing track on our classic album. Salt of the Earth is unusual in that the vocal was begun by Keith and carried on by Mick. I wondered why.
When I was putting the track down, I was singing, I think Mick was listening to how it was being put together, and then decided that he liked, maybe Jimmy Miller and myself decided that they liked my first verse better than the ones that Mick was doing. But then from then on, Mick got into it, and so we just used the best that we got.
The final track on Beggars Banquet. I asked Keith if there was anything in hindsight he'd change about the album.
No, not a thing. Bless its heart, leave it like that.
Where would Keith place it in the group's history?
It was the start of a whole string of good records. I would hate to sort of pull one out from anywhere from Beggars Banquet, Let It Bleed, Sticky Fingers, Exile on Main Street. I thought that we really hit a stride, a very consistent stride there. And if it tailed off a little bit after that, I think there was a lot more, not so much to do with being sort of, 70s rich jet set superstar, rock and roll, but more to do with the fact that in order to keep the band together, we'd had to leave England, so I couldn't just call Mick up and say, I'll be over in 10 minutes, I've got a great idea for a song, I suddenly after Exile, we all left England, went to France and recorded that in my house. And after that, slowly, everybody dispersed to different parts of the globe. So I think a lot of that maybe general, that lull in that period was to do with more just the geographical difficulties of like getting it together. The boys weren't just round the corner living on top of each other as we had always done before.
Men det forhindrede altså ikke Rolling Stones i efter 1968 at tegne sig for en utrolig produktivitet, både i pladestudiet og i kæmpemæssige vogntog på alverdens landeveje. Og i 98 står de jo på den danske sommerplakat igen. Vi fik historien om Beggars Banquet af Keith Richards, som var i selskab med BBC's